Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Mattel Jurassic World Rebirth release. As you can see, we've got the Launch and Battle Vehicle set. I have to give another massive shout out and a thank you to my buddy David who found this and sent it my way. Yet again, I don't know where he found it. I actually did not even ask, but something I'm going to have to find out at some point in the very near future. But a massive thank you again goes out to him for helping me to get a hold of this and also giving us our very first chance to see a Rebirth Velociraptor figure in person, which I've been kind of on the fence about, so I'm pretty intrigued to see what one actually looks like now in person. But you can see the packaging looks pretty cool, but it is pretty much the standard when it comes to the Mattel line. And then here on the back you can see some more information about the set, and basically down here the contents of everything that is included. So let's pop this open and check it out. So here is everything now out of the packaging, giving us a nice chance to look it all over and see what we all have included. So we've got a very nice vehicle. We have a kind of like a missile launcher up there on the back of the vehicle. We clearly have Martin Krebs, and we've got a Velociraptor, as well as two different style missiles that you can actually use with the vehicle. So if we actually move this all out of the way and take a look at our Raptor, again, it's our very first chance to see a Rebirth Raptor figure. You can see it looks okay for what it is. It does have a bit of an awkwardness to it, and I feel like these figures overall have with every single version I've seen revealed. I'm not a huge fan of the style of skin texture that we actually see on the upper jaw here. Kind of looks a little generic, but okay at the same time. We can see the nostrils. We can also see the eyes sculpted out there and painted really nicely, or maybe actually given a decal. I'm not entirely sure there. We can also see that the detail on the lower jaw looks pretty decent overall. The coloration of the face is actually quite nice, even though it has a little bit of like a shininess to it, kind of like a slight metallic shine. There's a good bit of color here in the face of the Raptor, as we have some bluish tones. You've got like some blacks, you have some dark browns, some light tan, and then you have a lighter tone, like a lighter tannish tone or a light brown there for the lower jaw that does move down into the throat of the Raptor. You can get a nice look and feel for what it looks like on the opposing side. Pretty cool colors for the Raptor here. You also have an articulated jaw inside the mouth. We can see the tongue and the teeth and everything sculpted out. The teeth are painted with a yellowish tone, and on the upper jaw they look all right. They look, almost slightly sharp, which is nice to see. I feel like they look a little better than some of the older Raptors, but the teeth on the lower jaw are a bit of a mess. Not only are they messy when it comes to the sculpt, they're very small and kind of awkward looking, they're also very sloppy as far as the paintwork goes, which is very uncommon, I would say, for the teeth of Mattel figures. It's normally not half bad, but there's definitely some sloppiness there. We can see the tongue painted out with a pinkish tone, but unfortunately it doesn't run to the inside of the mouth on the upper side. As we move back into the head, you can see, moving actually into the neck, you have some quills that pick up. Very Jurassic Park 3-ish as far as that goes. So pretty cool to see that kind of trend returning with the Rebirth Raptors. We also have some sort of osteoderms that move down here along the back of the neck, as well as a striping with a darker tone that you see moving down the neck. The primary skin texture of the Raptor, though, is very fine. Like, you can see it when we get nice and close. You can really see the scales, but it's super fine compared to a lot of the figures we've been looking at lately. We do have that light tone there. Actually almost looks like more of like a greenish tone from this angle, but you can see it moving down along the underside of the neck and then down into the chest. It does disappear about, halfway through the figure. We also have articulation in the neck, up and down, and that can swivel, so you can get a few different poses and stuff for the Raptor as far as that area of articulation goes. Sad that we don't have a spot up here. It would have been nice to be able to kind of change the positioning of the head a little bit like we have had on some of the older Raptors, but it is what it is. As we move down into the body, you can see the striping effect continue to move along the back of the Raptor. You can also again see the very fine scales of the figure. Moving down a little bit further, you have a very different style skin texture that picks up in the stomach region as you begin to move to the underside of the figure. We also have articulation in the arms, just forward and back. pretty standard as far as that goes. You can take a good look at the musculature of the figure there. We can also see the elbow. The hands, for some reason, are gigantic. They look kind of awkward, but you have some scoots moving down the fingers as well as the claws sculpted but unpainted. As you move back up, again, you see the striping does actually end up moving out into the tail, but not all the way. Of course, it ends fairly early on into the tail, but it is at least nice to see, the striping move out past the hip region a little ways. As you move down into the leg, you again have the musculature of the thigh nicely displayed here for the most part. The scales again looking pretty vibrant for being quite small. We have the kneecap right there, and then of course the calf muscle moving down, and we can also see leading into the foot sculpt that we've got some nice scoots down the toes, as well as the claws sculpted unpainted, but they do have a bit of a gloss coat, which is nice, and we do have dew claws as well. And I would say the feet are definitely oversized still, which is sad because Mattel has been making some strides lately when it comes to fixing some of the proportions of their figures, but the Raptors obviously, I guess they still don't trust to stand correctly, at least as far as the mainline figures go. And then as you move out here into the leg, actually we have leg articulation before we go too far. I do want to show that off, and there's the Fax app code for you if you'd like to add that to your collection. The detail on the underside of the feet is actually surprisingly nice. I wasn't quite prepared for that. But as you move out into the tail, you have a few skin wrinkles, and again, you also have the ability to swivel the tail, but that's it as far as that goes. And then you have a nice curve to the tail as you lead out with no more paintwork, unfortunately. And then again, the detailing on the underside looks all right, not too bad. And then the figure from one side to the other looks pretty close to the same, with the biggest difference being the positioning of the legs. I will say, even though the hands look larger, I absolutely prefer the sculpt and appearance of these hands over the older Raptors. I feel like these hands look a lot nicer. They just look, for some reason, fairly large, but, way nicer sculpted than the older hands that were on some of the other Raptors. But overall, it's, a mixed bag, but not half bad. And then when it comes to the different missiles and stuff that you have included for the vehicle, first of all, you have this one, which is pretty much just like a straight up missile. It is colored with an orange and looks okay. And then you also have like this net type version, also colored with an orange. And then you can see the detail of this isn't half bad. There wasn't much in the way of fine detail on the other one. Not a whole lot in this one either, but it looks okay for what it is. Then we've also got Martin Krebs here, so you can see again, definitely looking like him, also maybe slightly looking like Leonardo DiCaprio at the same time, but you can see the sculpt looks really good, the paint as well. You can definitely take note to his lips, some facial hair, his eyes and eyebrows are all applied to his face and applied nicely. It doesn't look sloppy or anything. We also have his hair, although when we move around here to the back, there is definitely something going on. He's got a big bald spot here on the back of his head, but you can see other than that, again, the hair looks pretty decent as far as the sculpt and paintwork goes. As you move down into his body, we can see his chest is exposed just slightly because of the way his shirt is applied to him. Also, the shirt looks pretty nice as far as the sculpt goes. Again, you've got like some wrinkles and creases and stuff here and there, as well as some buttons moving down the center of his shirt. We can also see again that it is painted with a white. As you move down through the arms, we can even get a nice sense of like some musculature there in his arms moving down. The same deal with his fingers. Again, you can take note to the knuckles and everything. So I feel like the actual sculpting and fine detail of this figure is a bit nicer than you see on some of the older Mattel figures. And as we continue to move down, we do have some pants here sculpted out, and again, colored with a grayish tone, and they also have some wrinkles and creases and stuff as you lead down. Pretty much your standard stuff when it comes to Mattel. And then his shoes, which are again painted with a brown and look pretty good overall. They of course don't have like the laces painted out or anything, but the sculpt of them is pretty decent. As far as his articulation goes, he can turn his head left and right, but it is a little bit stiff, just seems to continue to like pop right back into the original spot, so I'm obviously going to have to warm that up. Arms articulate out away from the body and forward and back. You also have the elbows forward and back and can swivel. And then moving down, do we have midsection articulation? No, we actually do not, but we do have leg articulation forward and back, and then of course knee articulation forward and back. The knee can swivel and the legs can do the splits like usual. So nothing really new as far as the articulation goes, pretty much your standard. And then the vehicle itself, definitely looking really cool and quite highly detailed. You can see the wheels look really nice. Again, the tires and everything sculpted quite nicely overall. A good bit of variation of color as we move through this one, as we've got like some reds and grays and tans and stuff. Very much so looking Jurassic World-ish as we lead along. One thing that is pretty cool is the mirrors actually come separate. Well, not separate, but like they come in a different part of the packaging where you have to apply them, and because of the way that they have them applied, you can actually articulate those, which is pretty cool. As you move to the inside, you can see the steering wheel and the dashboard and everything, as well as the shifter right there. The seats are also nicely done, nicely sculpted. They are given a grayish tone, as is pretty much everything else I just mentioned a moment ago. As you move along, you will see some nice fine detail. One thing I'm surprised I'm not really seeing though are like scratch marks and stuff. That's something that you often see on Mattel vehicles, but we don't really see it on this one. We do have a nice Jurassic World logo right there though, as well as the InGen logo, which I of course love. We've got a 02 on the back. As you move up, you again have that little launcher, which does articulate left and right. It's on a nice swivel on the vehicle itself, but you also have the ability to articulate it forward and back, which allows again a little posability for that, and of course, just in general, the ability to move it around, some nice playability when it comes to finding different targets to shoot. The weapon itself looks pretty decent, not really a whole lot when it comes to fine detail there either. The back of the vehicle also looks quite nice, and then we move over here again to the other side. Looks pretty much the same stickers and everything as far as like the logos on the vehicle. And then here on the front you can see some of the lights and stuff have been given stickers and everything, which is really cool. Definitely helps to add, an extra level to the display of this one. But overall, it is a very cool vehicle. And then of course you can move the vehicle forward and back very nicely. Seems to work pretty well overall. And then we have our launcher, so we might as well launch something with it. So we'll go ahead and shoot back there. And as you can see, it works very nicely, unlike the launcher in my recent Mosasaurus set, where that did not work at all. But as far as the size goes, for the vehicle itself, you are looking at lengthwise about 10.5 inches, or around 26.5 centimeters. And then for a height to the top of the weapon, about 6.25 inches, or just shy of 16 centimeters. For our human figure, again, pretty much right there in the 3 3/4 inch size range, or around 9.5 centimeters. And then for the raptor, lengthwise, you are looking at about 8 inches, or a little over 20 centimeters. And then for a height to the top of the quills, about 2 3/4 inches, or 7 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our set. And you can see, again, pretty much a good size, I would say, for almost everything. Like, you can very clearly see the vehicles in like the standard vehicle size range for Mattel. Martin Krebs is right there in the same size range as Muldoon, and the Raptor is very much so in the Attack Pack, Danger Pack, or most recently Frenzy Pack size range. And one more size comparison, we have an older Mattel Raptor next to the newer Mattel Raptor, showing you again that they are roughly in the same similar size range. The biggest difference that I can see between the Raptors is the fact that the head is much larger on the newer ones compared to the older ones. But overall, I would say some of the detail looks nicer. The hands and everything look nicer on the newer ones. The feet look slightly smaller, I will say that. But one thing that I think looks a lot nicer on the newer one are the claws of the feet. Look way better. Maybe a little bit too long, but definitely better than the older ones did as far as like the actual sharpness of the claws. So that is definitely a nice touch for the figure. But overall, they still look a little bit strange as far as these newer Raptors go. I really can't quite pinpoint it, but they do have an off sort of a look to them. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Rebirth Launch and Battle Vehicle set is pretty cool. It's definitely another really fun set. I really quite enjoy when they release these things, especially when it comes to having new vehicles in the Mattel line. I feel like they don't release nearly as much as they probably could, but we usually do get a fair share. But this set is really fun for what it is. Of course, you don't have anything that's absolutely going to blow your mind. And, we've got a Velociraptor because, we always get raptors from Mattel. But this one is actually definitely needed because we, of course, want to have raptors for Rebirth. It is a dinosaur that does appear in the film, and we would definitely want to see the new style of raptor in figure form. And I feel like overall the raptor is okay for what it is. It does still have a bit of an awkward look to it, especially when it comes to the head sculpt. I feel like is the weirdest looking area. Like, it just looks oddly thick and kind of strange, but other than that, for the most part, I feel like the figure looks okay for a Mattel Raptor. And of course, I do enjoy the fact that we have quills on the newer design for Rebirth. But as a whole, it's an okay Raptor with some okay articulation. The vehicle is really nicely done, and I would say the vehicle itself is the star of the show here. It's a beautiful looking sculpt, very nice coloration applied to it, really screaming Jurassic World, I would say. And of course, it's got the InGen logo, which I love. And then you have some nice playability with the vehicle as well, with that launcher and everything, and the ability to articulate like the mirrors, and of course, just generally push the vehicle around and drive it. And you have Martin Krebs as well, which is, of course, a massive plus, because prior to this set, I did not have that human from Rebirth in my collection. So it is nice to be able to include a new human character in my collection, and it does look really good. Sculpt-wise, it's very nice. The articulation currently is a little stiff, but I'm sure that'll work its way through once I move it more or warm up the joints. So overall, this is definitely a really fun set and absolutely worth picking up. So I will include a link in the description to where you can purchase this, though it is not available online quite yet to my knowledge, but it should be showing up online at some point in the very near future. So once that link does go live, you should be able to purchase it then. So make sure you check the link in the description every so often so you can find out again when it is officially in stock, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.